All right. As you may know, that this is the part 3 of the series that we launched this year as POMS Ph.D. workshop series. I'm the Vice President of Education for POMS, and this is one of our new initiatives. I've been out of faculty recruiting for many years. I was in the dean's office, but this past year, I was responsible for recruiting for MACE business. For our department, Information System Operations Management. That was quite an experience. I hadn't done that for a while, so it was kind of an eye-opener for me in terms of how recruiting has drastically changed over the years. I have spoken to candidates for a long time in the dean's office. I take 30 minutes, with the final dean's interview. I did that, but I had no concept of how the recruiting is done these days. So it was a great experience for me last year. One of the things I noticed was, we had fantastic candidates, but I think they look fantastic on the paper. When you interview them, then you see that, they were not, probably somebody didn't tell them how to interview. On the other hand, some looked not that great on paper, but then they're fabulous in the interview. So I thought it's probably good to give some perspective as to, academic interviews, job search process, what to do, what not to do. So I invited from some in the last 2 sessions, I had the best scholars in our field as speakers. We have had all POMS presidents, 4 or 5 presidents to speak last week, the last session. But today I thought we'll do a little differently. I said, why don't we pick the candidates from last year and hear from their mouth as to, what worked, what didn't work, how best to prepare, what you could have done differently. Now, let me preface this by saying that all 4 of them are fabulous candidates. I think by far they were the best, in my view, best candidates in the market. And we wanted all of them. Everybody wanted all of them. So I was fortunate enough to get to know all of them during the recruiting process at our MACE Business School. So I thought, let me ask them to participate in this, and they will bring a very diverse perspective in terms of the field, in terms of the research domain. So here they are. I have Verónica with us, Kevyan, Agni, and Scott. So I appreciate so much you being here. I think our participants will find this session very, very, very useful as they embark on this rather challenging journey of finding a job. Now, Verónica, I'm gonna ask all of you to kind of introduce yourself. Tell us where you are. Also, kind of talk a little bit about research domain. The kind of work that you're doing, because that will give some perspective to our new candidates to what kind of research you did and what worked in the market and what didn't work. So with that, I want to thank Rakesh, Professor Rakesh Malipati from Tulane. He helped us to get all this together. And one for graduate students, Mayuk, has been helping quite a bit for me with the technical issues. So I appreciate their support. So Verónica, I'm going to go with you first. If you take a few minutes to introduce yourself. And I know you were a bit more seasoned faculty member. You graduated quite a few years ago. So I think you can give perspective from a new entry in the market, as well as from your experience before. So why don't you go first, Verónica?
Sure. Thank you so much for the invite. Happy to be here with all of you and share some of my experiences going through the job market last year. My name is Verónica Villena. I was an assistant professor at Penn State. Last year, I decided to go to the market, and now I'm an associate professor at ASU. I got my PhD from IE Business School in Madrid. For those who are in Europe, probably are familiar with the IE Business School, right? So the kind of work that I do a lot of multidisciplinary work. I work very often with management faculty. Right now, I'm working, for example, with faculty in the College of Agriculture. And the focus of my work is on sustainable supply chain. more specifically how multinational companies, cascade their environmental and labor requirements to first and lower tier suppliers. I would say I do a lot of qualitative and quantitative work, which is fascinating, but at the same time is very challenging. For those who are doing qualitative work, you probably know that how hard it is to get to publish those projects in an A journal. So yeah, that's me. Happy to answer any questions during the session.
Esmaeil, you want to go next? You're
sure,
at the top
sure,
of my screen.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Bala. Hello, everyone. I'm Esmaeil Kevyanshokooh. I graduated from University of Michigan last year, and I've started my job this fall semester as an assistant professor of operation management at Mays Business School here at Texas A&M. And I was on the last year job market and would like to share with you some of my job market experience and tips, and happy to answer any question that you might have. And about my research, just in summary, my research interest is at the intersection of statistical machine learning, analytics, and data-driven optimization. And in particular, I develop personalized data-driven methods under uncertain environment and prove theoretical performance guarantee for them. And also, these methods actually are motivated by the practice and data of healthcare application and operation management application as well. And I'm happy to answer any question that you might have and also discuss several tips that I have for you.
Thank you, Esmaeil. Agni, you want to go next?
Yeah. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that this is a great initiative, and I think it's really helpful to kind of talk to candidates that were on the job market in the previous year and share our thoughts. So I'm really happy to be here. It's really an honor. My background is from MIT. I finished my PhD last year. My research is primarily focused, similar to what Esmaeil described, at the intersection between machine learning and optimization with applications to healthcare and insurance. I worked on developing new algorithms and models to personalize clinical decision-making and improve patient outcomes as well as healthcare operations. And recently I started working on how we can price the algorithmic risk that results from these models and facilitate the integration of these tools in practice. And so I just joined Oxford University at the business school this year. And I'm very excited to share my thoughts and my experience and anything that could be of use to you for this year.
Well, thank you, Agni. Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Schanke. I was on the job market last year. I did my PhD at the University of Minnesota in information and decision sciences. My research is focused on the design of digital entities. So think about chatbots or AI that represent firms. And in particular, what I'm looking at is how can you basically inject humanization tactics into these sort of interactions that we have with these digital entities, and then how does that end up influencing outcomes of interest? Think conversion or interactions with an organization.
Well, thank you, Scott. Thank you. So the way I structure this, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, but participants, please feel free to join in. You can unmute, or probably best to put your questions in the chat, and I'll be watching the chat. We'll try to answer all your questions. We got plenty of time, but I have so I'm going to go in the reverse order now. I'm going to go with Scott first. Scott, give us some sense of how did you prepare for your interviews last year, and what worked and what didn't work in your perspective.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the way that I prepared was, mostly I wanted to make sure that my research agenda was very clear, right? So I think there was a lot of work that was, done up front in terms of, thinking about, what's my research statement? It's basically that's your stump speech during the interviews. You want to make sure that that is as crystal clear as possible. So, for the first sort of set of interviews, which I think, most of those were online, I would rehearse, sort of, what is my research all about, right? So you had your little elevator speech. And then, you want to make sure that you can talk and speak to each paper that's in your dissertation. So, you want to have, sort of sub-elevator speeches within, each of, kind of within this elevator speech, right? And it's maybe like 15 minutes or so. And you want to be able to like have that really, tight and, right at the tip of your fingertips. In terms of preparation, right? So, I came from industry. So industry, they focus a lot on those, like behavioral interview questions, you don't get any of those in academic interviews. It's mostly tell me about your research, tell me about, teaching. So think about, what type of courses maybe you'd want to teach. Those were some of the things, and, also have sort of in the back of your mind a blueprint. If, let's say that the job opening was about, teaching, AI or something like that. Think about how would you teach that course? What would be the different pieces that would go into a course, and, have a high level blueprint so that, if they do talk about teaching, have something, prepared there. Insofar as like, things that, I prepared for that didn't end up, coming to be useful. I don't know if I really have a good, I had like really great coaching from my advisors. So like they really made sure that I didn't, waste my time focusing on, these sort of ancillary things, like thinking about behavioral interview questions or things like that. So.
Scott, thank you. So was there any time you thought, man, that didn't go well, I could have done differently? Was there any moment like that during the process?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, there's, especially like the first interviews you have, things maybe don't come out as clear as you would have liked, or like maybe you didn't describe, some of your research as succinctly as you would have liked, or, I think I'm thinking back to, one of my first interviews, I just kind of, didn't really like describe a holistic picture of my research agenda. And I think people were kind of, they had to ask a bunch of follow-up questions. I didn't have any disasters though, so that was good. And like, as you're going through the process, I think, just kind of refining your elevator pitch. The first one you give is going to be a little rough, but then, the next one and the next one, it'll get easier, right?
Well, thank you, Scott. Agni, I'll go with you, but I have two questions in chat. One is, I know we need to wear a suit, but whether we need to wear a tie in a Zoom interview or job talk, any one of the panel members can take it. Villena, you want to take that? Villena?
I would say yes, absolutely. And, I have seen candidates coming through Penn State, many of them. And you expect, you're actually looking at the candidate as a faculty, as a professor, right? Whether that person can teach a class either for undergrads or graduate students. I will recommend, to go full suit with a tie, show all the manners. And I will encourage you also to keep an eye on your body language. This is very important, especially nowadays in a Zoom world that is hard for people to look at, how you express your ideas. I will say practice that part. I think this is, for me, that was the biggest challenge. How I'm going to deliver a job talk, knowing that it's already difficult in person. Now you're doing virtual, right? So I will give some tips what I did, and I think worked really well. But I think I encourage everybody to give the very best, and the people in front of you are looking at you as a colleague, as a teacher, and as obviously as a good researcher.
Agni, so I'm going to come back to you. The question, same question I asked Scott. How did you prepare for the interviews, and what went well? What may not have gone well? Obviously, you have a job at a great institution. I think I suspect everything went well, but we all along the way learned things that we wish we hadn't done that way. I do that even today after being in this business for so long. Take that, Agni. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. So I think that, one of the best tips that I got before starting the process was, at any step of the recruitment process, be always preparing for the next step. So like, for example, like if it's like the time of submitting your applications, once this is done and you're done with that part, start already like preparing for your pre-interviews. And once you finish the pre-interviews, just already start preparing for the next one, because usually we have the attitude of being risk averse and saying, okay, let's see when they come and then I'll start. But then like opportunities come very quickly, and then you want to have time on your side to actually like prepare for things. So that really helped me a lot. The other aspect related to the talk is like practice the talk as many times as you can, to the extent that you could say it almost by heart without even looking at the slides. So because while you're going to be presenting, it might be that, institutions that like they just wait until the end and then they start asking questions, but it would also be that people would be very interested and they will start asking you questions while you're presenting. So you want to be at your best and very focused and be able to come back to your presentation, even if you had a long discussion before that. So that was really helpful. I would say spend a lot of time before the interview studying the department, the faculty that you're going to meet, the research, what is it that they're interested, what are they teaching, and definitely make a long list of questions that you want to ask. Usually people are going to come and they're going to be very eager to learn about your work, but they will also be very eager to help you decide if this is a good place for you too. And so think about what is it that would make this department a great place for you, and ask those questions. And it's worth to tailor your questions to the member of the faculty that you are actually meeting with, because more senior faculty, we have better advice related to the tenure track, or what is it that they are expecting in the department, what is the mentality of the department. And more junior faculty will be able to tell you more about the transition into teaching. How are the students like? How easy it is to attract PhD students to work for you if you're young in the department. So things like that are really helpful. And you should show that you're really interested in the place. And that means that you have a good list of questions prepared for it. I think things that didn't work well for me, I think the first interviews are always the most challenging ones, and it's good to practice a lot. I would say don't hesitate to ask for help or for mock interviews or mock presentations from your peers, from your advisors, even from other faculty from your department that you don't know that well. And as a result, you would go a little bit more out of your comfort zone to be better prepared for the interview. I think also being able to present your research in a short fashion helps a lot. And I would say keep your answers relatively short, even though I'm kind of blabbling now for a long time. And it's good because it leaves a lot of room for discussion rather than just a monologue and then another monologue in the room. So that really makes it more interactive and also takes a bit out the stress of the interview.
Ask you a follow-up question. It's on the chat. How long should an elevator pitch speech should go? And also related to the same, how much should we elaborate on the dissertation essays during the elevator pitch, given the time short? Where should we focus? So they're kind of related questions. How long the pitch and what the content of that pitch ought to be? Agni, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I would say there are some places where they will say in the pre-interview, like, prepare to talk about that for 5 minutes. So like you have to have versions of it, like a shorter version, a medium version, and a long version. So I would say there's no real single rule for any interview you'll have. If you just want to like have somebody's attention and say a few words, I would say no more than 2 minutes. Probably, you know, like 1 to 2 minutes is enough to just say the general idea of what you do and what are the areas that you're focusing. And then there will be follow-up questions. So like, I wouldn't say spend too much time into going to your thesis. Just say about what is the overall methodological areas that you're working with and what are the applications that you're looking at. Or if there's one big problem that you're trying to solve, mention that problem. It's all about the motivation behind it. And then like there will be follow-up questions. So you can delve into the chapters of your thesis. You can start talking about other collaborations you've had, but definitely that shouldn't go into the elevator pitch.
Panel members, please chime in anytime. Unmute yourself, chime in. That's how we had the conversation before, so don't hesitate. Although I give question to one of the panel members, it's question for all of you, so please free to get in. So I have another question. Maybe Esmaeil can address this. This is an important question. I think this question came up both sessions with our senior scholars. On the average, how many job applications did you submit on your job search? It's probably not you, as one should. So, what would you recommend with respect to quantity versus quality? And how do you what is a good strategy in terms of just we send application to everybody as an advertisement, or should we focus on a select group of schools that you think you have a shot at? What would be a good strategy? And I think any one of you can chime in, but Esmaeil, you can start with it.
Yeah, so actually, in terms of the number of job application that I submitted last year, so last year was a little bit exceptional because of the COVID situation. The number of job positions are not comparable to the other years. So what I did, I applied for most of the positions. So I think I cannot talk. I think probably like I cannot talk about the last year because last year was a little bit exceptional. But what I would like to talk about, and in terms of quality and quantity, I think one thing the candidate definitely should do is to make sure that like they actually read the job description very carefully. Make sure that some places they are looking for special persons. They are looking for special research interest. So make sure that they actually adjust their documents, CVs, and research statement and teaching statement to what they need, and they actually can explain in their cover letter how they can fit into that positions. So I think these are, but you need to make sure that you spend enough time for each applications, because it is not the case that you are going to submit your CV, research statement, and teaching statement for all places like the same documents. So that's not going to work. So you have to spend you need to spend time for each institution separately and make sure that your documents, they are adjusted to what they need. So that's one point. And so I would also talk about some other points. So the first thing is about the preparation of your documents and what you should do for the first interview, which is usually a short interview and takes about 10 to 15 minutes. And the second part is about some tips on final interview, more specifically your job market presentation. So let me start with the first one. Probably we will come back and then I will talk about some of my tips for the job market presentation. So about the first thing, you need to spend a good amount of time to prepare your document, including cover letter, CV, research, teaching, and some places they also need diversity statement. So given that each document deserves a lot of time and effort, you should produce quality documents that reflect your academic credential, your current and future research interests, and also your potential. So an important point at this stage is to try your best to seek advice from your advisor, recently hired faculty in your department, other people and friends who can provide feedback and edits on your statement. ask them to provide feedback about how your material and documents look at a glance and also in depth. So your statement should be completely understandable by different people with different research background and interest. So that's all about your document. And let me give you some advice on your first interview, because some of the question is about the elevator pitch. And Agni actually answered it very nicely. So this interview is typically 10 to 15 minutes, and you can expect to be asked about maybe 5 to 10 questions or 7 questions. And you're probably one of the 16 up to 20 candidates being interviewed for the first round. And the interviews are often conducted in a short span of time, usually back to back. So keep your answers to one to 2 minutes for each question, and be ready to extend your answer if they ask for follow-up question. So at this stage, you can expect mainly general question about your research, future research, and your interest in their institution. And so most of the questions are easy to anticipate. So I do recommend you make a list of potential questions that the search committee may ask, and develop your answer in advance. Think about the structure of your answer, practice them several times, and even memorize them. And another advice that I have at this stage is you need to make sure that the research committee can see that you have a solid vision. So having a vision in your research is very important. This means that you should let them see that you understand your research literature, you know what you have done so far and what you are going to do in the future. And these things have to be related to each other in a coherent manner. Make sure that you spend a good amount of time on developing your vision or elevator pitch. So these are all my point about the document and also the first interview. I also have some point for the job market presentation, and I'm happy to talk about them as well.
Verónica, so quality versus quantity, and yours were a very different situation. You were an advanced stage in your career, but if you're advising your student, and this is a question that comes up all the time, our students ask us all the time, should we send a blanket application to everybody that's applied, or just be selective as to, wherever we think we have a shot at? What would be your advice, Verónica?
I think each of us have to reflect about, our risk profile, right? So there are people who are more risk averse. There are people who are more, risk seeking. So you have to ask yourself. And my only advice is about fit. I don't think it's about trying to submit your applications as many times as you can. It is about looking at the market, identifying those departments, those schools that you think your research is going to be appreciated, it's going to fit with other colleagues. Potentially, if you were joining school X, I will find 1 or 2 co-authors right away. The very first day that I'm going to join that department, I will have potential co-authors, right? I think that is the most critical part. And that will be my advice to all the PhD students. Think about fit. If your research fits with what the department is doing, right? And especially if you identify 3 or 4 of them, do your very best to tell them, I am doing X, and I have identified this person, and this person, and I can work with them right away. I think that will be my advice to those who are in the job market. I know how overwhelming can be. Obviously, you have to customize your papers, your letters and all of that. Obviously, you have to do that. But at the same time is precious, right? We don't have all the time. So trying to identify those schools that truly you think like you're going to join the department and the next day you're going to have co-authors there. That's the way how I thought about, choosing my options.
Thanks, Verónica. Scott, I have a question. I'm going to read from the chat. How would you send a strong signal to a few schools that you're particularly interested in them, example, because of location or other reasons. I might add, without sounding unauthentic. And if you go to every school and say, this is the place I want to be, very soon you realize that you're saying the same thing to 200 other schools.
Yeah.
But how do you be authentic and really mean it?
See, this is, I think, helpful if you've got a good network. So, I feel like the job market doesn't start, year 5 or year 6. Job market starts year 1. And when you go to conferences and things like that, you want to build a network, you want to talk to folks. And then, you kind of want to utilize that network to, try and find out more information, try and maybe signal your interests through those sorts of channels. Additionally, I mean, you can tailor, some of your packet a little bit to be a little bit more, oh, I'm interested in, this school because of, XYZ. More specifically, so I ended up in Milwaukee. One of the big, reasons why I really wanted to come here. So I'm originally from Wisconsin. My family all lives in Milwaukee. And I even mentioned that in the interview. Like I said, hey, my family lives about 10 minutes away. So, that's one of the big drivers that would really make me want to come here. And they were really receptive to that. That was kind of, and then, in the interviews, like we were able to build some rapport over Wisconsin and, some of those things, which really helped. But you really want to show genuine signals, right? So you really want to talk to your heart, when you're talking to people in these interviews. And if there's a real genuine reason why you want to be there, I think it will shine in the interview. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. This is for Agni specifically. Agni, what kind of questions do you recommend that we ask in the initial interview? I think that's what I suspect that's what the whoever did this meant. So initially, what would be an appropriate yet meaningful questions to ask?
Yeah, so I think that in the first round, like it would probably have to be something like related to the research, the teaching, or the department per se, or like what is it that they're looking for. Like you're probably gonna have time for one question, given that you don't have that much time. So it should be really like something in the sense of like trying to figure out what is it exactly that the department is looking for, what is the general direction in terms of research that the department is heading to, or something like what are the teaching expectations for the position. That could also be something. Of course, like when you go into the like general interview, which is like when you do the presentation, there you have way more time and space to ask a lot of questions, and there you have to factor in any aspect of what it means really to be a tenure track faculty. It would have to incorporate parts of research, you have to incorporate teaching, you have to be like funding and like what is the process to like work with students and how easy it is to work with students and learn more about them. It would have to be about your personal life and kind of what is like to live there. I think for us last year was particularly challenging because we were not able to physically visit the university. And so you had to kind of detect those kinds of things from like talking with faculty. And I think that like the overall impression I had is like people are really nice. Like I don't think I talked with anyone who seemed like a person I wouldn't like to talk to. And I think that's the general scope. Like you should really think of this year as the year that like a lot of very like good and exceptional people. Oh, I think I'm repeating. Okay, a lot of really exceptional people are gonna listen to you talking, share about your work, and they will give you very useful feedback. And even if you don't go to a specific place, the feedback that they give you is really valuable. So be able to kind of like take that in and incorporate it for your research. That would be really, really helpful. But I would say in your first interview, you cannot go into too much detail. So you have to ask a general question relatively.
Thank you, Agni. So the next question, I'm going to rephrase that a little bit. give us a sense of what would a solid research statement would look like, and how long should it be? Everybody has to submit a research statement, a teaching statement, a portfolio, so on and so forth, depending on the institution they're applying. So give us some thoughts on what would be a good research statement and how long. Verónica, you want to take that?
Sure. My research statement was, I believe, 2 pages, no more, maybe 2.5. And you have to write this research statement in a way that anyone can understand. So sometimes, for example, and this is based on what I have seen in others, candidates, is that they write a statement. For example, they are doing analytical work, and only analytical people can understand what they are talking, right? So that's a big mistake. You need to, look at your research portfolio, from a point of view that anyone can understand. And more importantly, what is the impact of your research? That is key. I have read so many research statements that they say, okay, but who cares about this, right? That's the next question that I have. So tell us why the work that you're doing, the 5 years that you're investing in your career, why do we have to listen to you? Does it have an impact on managers? Does it have an impact on policymakers? Does it have an impact on students? You have to tell us explicitly. Do not assume that I am going to make the connections for you. Instead, tell me explicitly. And I got this question from another student that I was talking the other day, and I was kind of surprised. I said, I have seen in committees when we met to discuss the applicants, we actually put up the research statement and everybody's reading. So people take these documents very seriously. Do not just do it, because you want to check all the boxes that you have submitted the document. People do read it. So take the time, to explain the kind of work that you do, the kind of tools that you're using, and the kind of impact that you're hoping to have. That would be my 2 cents.
Thank you. Agni, you want to add? Anything to that, Agni?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'll touch a little bit on what Esmaeil said about having a vision and being clear that this is your vision and that this is different from what your advisor's vision was when you started your PhD. You will definitely hear the question is how is your research going to be different from your advisor's research agenda? And you have to have a very good answer for that. And this is really important to think about it now on 5 years down the road, 7 years down the road, what is it going to be your contribution? Why will people remember you in the field? And this is really the point of the research statement. It needs to flow like a story. It needs to say this is my vision. This is the problem I've been I want to solve. This is what I've done in the past. And these are the reasons why I'm very well prepared to achieve this goal. And then say, look, these are all the things I will do to make it happen. And so it needs to flow like a story. It starts with your past and it will continue with the future. And then you need to also say why this department is the best place for this vision to be materialized. What are the resources that you need and why they are there? And then in the interview, you'll have to ask to figure out if they're indeed there. And if they're not, and if it's not a place that it will make you happy, then it's not the right place for you. So I think the research statement is really the starting point. But before you write it down, you have to crystallize in your heads, what is it that you want to be remembered for 5 years down the road?
Agni, thank you. Let me change the direction a little bit. I want to talk about the job talks. And we talked about it last year. I mean, in the last session, I had some very seasoned faculty members. They gave their perspective as to what would a good job talk look like? But it'd be great to hear from you because you're the one who just did it, all right, just last year. So give us a sense of what worked well for you in a job talk. What was your job talk like? Esmaeil, you want to go first?
Sure. So for what you should present is, I know some of you or some of the candidates would like to talk about everything that they have done in their PhD. So you don't have that much. Instead, it would be better to just select your most interesting paper or most strong result and present that. Don't present everything you have done in your PhD in your job talk. It will fail. So you will have time. Of course, you will have time with because your job interview day includes office visit with faculty or job talk presentation, meeting with graduate and PhD student, or even lunch or dinner with the faculty. So you will have time to talk with faculty about your other research or other papers during the office visit with the faculty. So another important issue is about the structure of your presentation. You need to start. So this is how I'm thinking about the presentation. You need to start with a broad introduction of what you have done in a simple but interesting language so that everyone can understand what you are talking about. Your audience may come from different field or backgrounds. You're not going to have your job talk only for your colleagues who are in the same field or in the same similar department. So you need to give them a broader version of what you have done and clarify at the very beginning what you obtain as your main contribution and your strong results. And then after presenting this vision, you may want to go a little bit into your math or methodology analysis. And then again, you may want to expand what you have done into a broader conclusion or in a bigger picture, like managerial insight or implication. So I think you should not focus very much on the details. Your job type is not to show how you're good at the complexity of your math or methods. The complexity of your methods will be determined according to your publication that you have. So I think that's very important. And some other tips that I have, probably you may want to have some extra slides that you may receive some questions. So you have something more to show, and practice your job talk several times. Memorize it. Practice it in front of yourself, in front of your friends, in your department. Ask them for the feedback. Or even these days, you can record your talk and check how you're doing. Revise your files several times. And also, another point is make sure that you're ready to answer some questions in your talk. For example, why did you use this method? So what? What you find? How is going to help manager or decision maker? Why didn't use the other technology or the other method or the other theory? So these are some of my tips about the presentation, and also I'm happy to answer any questions, any follow-up questions. I think you are mute now.
Yeah, sorry, Scott. Would you like to add some to the job talk conversation here?
Yeah, so I think you really want to present something that is like the best representation of you, right? So if you think about that broader picture, what's something that's going to speak to who you are as a researcher, right? And you want to try and place the vision. So what I started was, in the beginning, when you're giving the presentation, where does this, paper fit into the general vision of your research? And, you want to start with that almost, right? So you kind of give them the research agenda, and then, go into the presentation. My presentation was, luckily, it was, something that was, in the later stages. It was very close to being published. It actually got published on the job market. So that was, really great for me. But, you want something that's been through, trials and, been beaten on a little bit so that you know exactly where the hangups in the paper. And you want to make sure that you think about all these things that maybe reviewers have said, or things like that. And you want to make sure you have a slide for those, later on. So like if somebody were to come up and say, hey, what about this? You can go flip to it later on in the page, in your presentation and address that. And yeah, I mean, I think, pretty much all of us, we're all, interviewing in business schools. So you want to, really hammer home, the managerial implications. And I think that helped my job talk. I did a field experiment and I, worked directly with a retailer, built a AI chatbot and, basically ran it with real customers. And, it was really clear what the managerial implication was. So, you really want to try and find something to highlight that, to really, sell the folks why you belong in a business school and things like that.
Scott, thank you. Let me ask you kind of a follow-up question about job talk, about presentation. I think, you go to a place where, a lot of places are very democratic. Typically people don't get the exact candidates they want. It's maybe a majority voted for a candidate, then you're sour about it, right? And you're sitting in the front row of a presentation, either asking loaded questions or just the body language to slip the candidate off. I mean, how do you manage that? I mean, that's, your first time in the job market and you got two faculty sitting in the front and asking all types of questions. You don't want to be rude to them because that's not a good strategy. And at the same time, you don't want to be frustrated and, kind of get you off track. So give us a sense of, and it happens all the time. It happens at many institutions. Unfortunately, it does happen. So how do we manage that? Any one of you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that happens a lot, or can happen, not that often. I think a lot of times, yeah, there's sort of somebody has their own horse in the race and may want to try and, get you off course. I think, the best way is to not show a ton of emotion. So don't get angry. That wouldn't be good. You want to make sure that you try and address it as best you can. And then, if you can't address it, say, maybe we can follow up, after the presentation or something like that and try and move on. Because the thing that you really don't want to do in a job talk is go over. Don't go over. That's, less is more. You want to give people as much, and you want to make sure that you get through it. So, you want to address the question, as best to your ability, but if you can't, try and say, we'll take it up, after and we'll move on, because I'm trying to, finish within time. So that would be probably, the best way that I would think about doing it. I'm sure there's, better ways to handle things too, but.
Verónica, you had any such experience during your career?
Not really.
Oh, good. That's a good
So I did not, but I will fully agree with Scott. Not show any emotions. No show that you are angry, and take it very politely and say, we can follow up. I do have a one-on-one interview later with you, and I can go and explain this more detail, something like that. But do not, as Scott mentioned, never go over the time that you are allocated. That really frustrates a lot of people in that department. Just, be on time. And if you feel like the person keep pressing you, just at the end say, well, let's follow up later on in our one-to-one meeting. Definitely.
I would say on that like, it was really helpful for me to have versions of my presentation and like have some slides that are like a buffer of time. And so in case I was seeing that the presentation is going over time, I knew that I could cut those slides and it wouldn't impact the delivery of the presentation. But I knew that if I was not getting many questions, I could go over the slides and then fill up some time so that I am finishing exactly on time. So I would say have some buffers in the presentation that you could skip, but you could also add so that you're fully in charge of time when you're presenting. And it's okay to say at the end, for the interest of time, I think like, you know, I'll take questions at the end. If you see that you're really running out of time and you want to get through 2 slides that are very important.
Agni, thank you. I have a question on the chat here. What is the best way to present our work in research statement if we are working in 2 different fields? For example, healthcare and revenue management. Any one of you can take that, because I think most of you are working in multiple areas. So I think there will be a good way to provide some insights to our participants. So Esmaeil, you want to take it?
Sure.
I know you work in 2 different fields.
Right. So the way I did it is I've tried my best to actually, for example, like here in this example, they say healthcare and revenue management. I try to put it in a same umbrella. Like I try to connect them in some way. So, for example, like from methodological perspective, like for example, I'm just making an example, making a case. So these 2 areas, like I use some like AI techniques. I use some data-driven techniques. So I think that could be one way to try to connect these things to these different fields of study together in your statement. And also, as Verónica said, you need to in your statement you need to talk about the impact. You need to talk about like what is the impact of. So if you are working on different areas, like what is the impact of these different fields that you have worked on? Like what you did, how can impact like the decision maker or the manager. I think that's how probably you can connect these things together.
So I want to ask you about a lot of times it all varies differently at Texas A&M. As you know, we meet prospective faculty in groups. You know, they don't go from office to office. In some schools, you meet with every faculty individually. It sort of varies from school to school. I've seen both models, are very different models. I think one of the important things to do when you're meeting one-on-one is to stay positive, stay upbeat, don't ever gossip. Don't ever put somebody down, right? Don't talk about the other professor or your school. That sends a really bad message as a colleague. And I think I've been through a lot of interviews in my career, and I've seen some people come and badmouth their schools, some colleagues they work with, or somebody that gave them a hard time in the job talk. One of the colleagues a hard time. It said, so that is not the place to gossip. So my advice to you is really be very professional about how you manage this experience. Never talk about somebody else or criticize somebody or somebody else's work. That's really if a one-on-one meeting. So I want to talk about meetings with the dean's office. A lot of times you're going to meet with either executive associate dean or one of the associate deans for research faculty, or the dean is himself or herself. I was executive dean for Mace Business School for 8 years, and I have spoken to, I get 30 minutes with him. My dean just let me handle that. So I got about 30 minutes. They're scheduled 30 minutes of my time to talk to these candidates. So in the 30 minutes, I make a choice, I make a decision. In fact, in about first 10 minutes, I say, I don't want this person, so it's probably he or she is not a good fit. So I think it's really important that conversation to go well, because deans will call downstairs or upstairs, say, we simply don't want this person here. He or she is not a good fit. So it's a very critical component of the process. So I want you to talk about, I don't know, you last year you probably had virtual meetings with the dean's office, or what is the best way to manage that meeting? What to say and what to ask, what not to say. You probably have about less than 30 minutes. Deans are busy bees, or at least they pretend they're busy. So Villena, why don't you take that?
Yeah, definitely. This is a critical, I would say, interview. I would say my experience has been that the deans are not interested in knowing the details of your research.
Yes,
they are interested just in the 2-3 minute presentation, the elevator pitch of your research, and don't go into the details with the dean. Instead, I personally, because of my research on sustainability, I ask questions about, how whether sustainability is or not a core of the business core, or if they said no, well, what is the vision? Would you consider this? Is there any center, any kind of resources in place, and things like that? And I actually had a very pleasant conversation, right? Some deans actually say, yes, we are doing X, Y, and Z. And it is about also, to get to know them. And I would say the other aspect with the dean's office is that you want to tell, I would say, in any interview, especially within academic interviews, we get to know you because of your vita, right? So I know how to read, and I know that this person is doing this kind of work. What I don't know is who you are as a person, right? So whether you are a polite person, a kind person, whether you are from that country or not the other country. So this is the time for you to, for them to get to know you as a person as well, right? So it is I would say at the dean's office, I just tend to have like conversation with another person. Not with another researcher talking about, what we are going to do, but instead, okay, let's, for example, I do have a 4-year-old boy, and I don't mind talking about my family. In fact, the dean was talking about her daughter going, to the same school, and, and I think that makes the conversation more pleasant. So, it is a lot of stress going on when you go and visit and do all, back-to-back meetings. Try to get the opportunity also to, somebody told me this, and it's so true. Being in your market is the only time that you will get everyone across multiple departments paying attention to you, right? This is the only time. After you are done, you get a job. I mean, not everybody is, looking at what you're doing, but when you are in the job market, people are looking at, really, they want to know about your work. And so this is an opportunity for you to develop your network, even if you don't get the job, right? Even if you don't get a job, you actually need X, Y, and Z. I'm going to see the X, Y, and Z in the next conference. So, use this as an opportunity to develop your own network as well. That's my 2 cents.
I just to kind of piggyback on that. I feel like some of the best conversations with the deans is, talking about their high level vision for what they want to see in the school. What is, the way forward? Because they're basically driving the vision of the school, right? And, in terms of that, you want to also ask yourself the question, would I be a good fit for, where this school is going? And, how can we kind of align, what you're doing, and also kind of make you think about, how can I best kind of be a good team player and help also drive that vision if you were hired there, right? So that's another question that you may want to ask yourself, right? And really try and, in the conversation, you want to kind of, display how you would be a great, fit for helping to kind of push that vision along.
Thank you. Scott, another question here. When do you think is a good time to ask about working conditions, salary, and flexibility? And I might be able to shed some light on it because I've been there.
I never asked.
Never is all that conversation. Right. All that conversation should wait until
you have the offer.
Yeah, it's until after you get an offer, and that's the when you start negotiating with the department head or the dean's office. Until then, don't ask about any working conditions, salary, flexible vacation time, and leave and all this stuff. That's probably not a good conversation at that time. They might even sometimes people, might ask you what kind of salary you might expect. It's a trap.
So I would like it to be competitive with the market.
That's right. Yeah.
Something very vague. I would never say I want XY plus that's I think that you always want to stay not talk about salary. But working conditions, I mean, I don't know. I think you could maybe ask, how would you describe the environment here? Something like that. Do you guys meet outside of school? What are some things that the faculty do together? Just to kind of understand what's the kind of team dynamic. But yeah, flexibility. I wouldn't ask about vacation days or.
Faculty members have no vacation. You know that, right?
Yeah.
So what is vacation? I don't know. Every day is a work. So yeah. Agni, you want to add anything in terms of your conversation with the dean's office?
I think that these are I think most of the top things that I would say are pretty much covered, but I would say that it's a great opportunity for you to learn more about the university as a whole, other than just the vision about the other departments, how much collaboration there is between the departments, whether there are faculty that work across disciplines. I think one of the beauties of our field is the fact that we really can switch between application areas very quickly. And so you might find yourself working with the agricultural department and with the medical department and then with the computer science department. So learning more about these other places of the university would also be very useful for you. And probably you would have the capacity to discuss about that with the dean. Also, the priorities about teaching and developing new programs at the school. So if there is an initiative for a new master's degree or for a new executive program, probably the dean would be involved into that. So that's a good place to ask. And also related to university funding. So if there are some grants that would be of interest to you and they are coming from the university and not necessarily from the department, that would also be something to talk about. So it's a more macro type of discussion, and I will definitely keep the research specifics out of it. I think we cannot hear you.
Yeah, you're remote.
I forget. Sorry. Suppose you're, but also always keep in mind that I can tell you last year we had, because I ran the project, we had 200 applications and we had 3 slots. And then we brought in the best candidates in the market. And for various conditions, various reasons, sometimes it has nothing to do with your capabilities, your dossier. It's the circumstances are that you probably have an offer from somewhere else and our timing was wrong. You may have other constraints in your personal life. So if you don't get an offer, if you don't take an offer from an institution, there is nothing wrong with that. You should never think of that, well, they gave me an offer, I didn't take it, they're going to not like me for the rest of my life. No, they don't do that, because people understand the constraints with which you operate as well as the institution. So, but the important thing is that take the opportunity to build that relationship. I can tell you that I graduated 37 years ago. And I went to many different schools, my job search. I still have beers with them at the conferences. The school that I went to 36 years ago, I have got an invitation to be associate editor for journals from those people. I have collaborated with those people. So this is not just about getting a job. This is about building a connection and it's friendship for that will last a lifetime. So never think of if you don't get a job, that's the end of it. It's not the end of it. It's just the beginning of a relationship between you and the institution, and vice versa for us. For example, Verónica, Esmaeil is right here, Agni and Scott. I think I'll remember you forever now in the field, because we had such great interaction with each other. So keep that in mind. So let's suppose you get an offer from the institution. What is the protocol? What protocol should you follow in terms of making sure you do everything right and don't make somebody mad, especially if you have other offers? For example, most likely you have multiple offers. And how do you manage that relationship? I'm going to go with the Agni first. Agni?
Yeah, I found that to be the most challenging part of the job market, to tell you the truth. Also because I had a fantastic time talking with colleagues from many places, and I was feeling a lot the pressure of, I don't want to ruin my relationship with these people, and I really respect them, and there are many factors that come into play. I had a two-body problem last year, which makes it like very complicated too, and like figuring out where you want to go in the end. And so I think like once you have an offer, you should be like, what worked really well for me was to be very clear and upfront on what are the other deadlines that I have when I'm negotiating, what are the real considerations that I have in going to one place or the other, and like being very honest in saying like, these are the things that are basically my main concerns for coming to this place, and figuring out whether you can resolve them or not. And it could be right, and really understand. But I think that trying to be very honest and clear that these are my deadlines, these are the times that I can respond to, and then try to see if from some places there's more flexibility in extending a deadline. If, for example, there is like one interview that you really want to like have and you want to hear from, like once you have the offer, you could say, look, I want to have time at least by that period, because it's very important for me and I want to hear from that time. So I think it's okay. And then you have to scope the relation to see how much margin do you have to push time or not. Usually like you have some margin at the beginning, then you go back, and so it's a back and forth. But what really like people will not appreciate is you not being honest and transparent, because there are many important people involved in the process. They invest their time, they invest their efforts to like make it happen for you, and if you're not transparent, then that will create some tension. But being honest, I think, is generally very much appreciated, and these are going to be your colleagues in the field for a long time, so you want to have a good relationship with them.
Verónica, anything to add?
Yeah, I would say I was fortunate to receive multiple offers, and it was, as Agni mentioned, it was very challenging. How do you handle this, right? You have multiple schools at the same time. My first advice is transparency. You have to tell them, I have X, Y, and Z right now. These are the schools, and looking at if it's a family constraint, if it's professional constraints, tell them where you are. And, if you need more time, you can ask for more time. The only problem is that the schools itself, they do have a timeline. If they extend an offer, right, let's say to Maria here, so we're going to wait for Maria only for 2 weeks. Otherwise, we have to follow, give the offer to the second candidate that we have. So they do have a constraint as well. So you have to be mindful that, they cannot give you 3 weeks. They won't, right? So yeah, transparency is, I think, the best thing that you can do. And another aspect that I did, I actually, I was very concerned about one particular school. I eventually made my call where to go. And what I did, I reached out to every single person who interviewed me in that school. And I, sent a very good email telling, the reasons, explaining why I didn't accept the offer. And right now I can tell you, I actually working with 2 faculty in that school, right, in papers. So it's not the end of the world. Even if you reject the offer, I think they understand that there are some personal decisions, and you chose another school. And, the best thing that I could do is just reach out to them later and invite them to keep working with me, right? So that's how I handle this situation.
Thank you. And also, if I might add, several years ago, you have to be absolutely truthful about what you say, because it's a small community. They all know each other. I can guarantee you they'll find out. Many years ago, I was negotiating. We hadn't made an offer, but we were discussing an offer with the candidate, and the candidate said that he had an offer from another school, and he told me what the salary was, and it kind of surprised me, because I keep up with the salary in the market. We get all this data from ASCSB all the time. We kind of know what the market goal rate is, and all the dean's office, they gather data all the time. So I called a friend at that institution, and that friend said, we haven't made an offer, and we're certainly not making that. We are considering making an offer. We haven't made an offer, and we are certainly not going to give that person that kind of money. And so I think, of course, this person didn't get an offer from us, neither he get an offer from other schools. So you unnecessarily put yourself in that situation by making things up. So be absolutely truthful. Transparency, that's the word. Be truthful, because people will find out. This is a very small community of production operations management and IS people. We all know each other. This is a good question. I know the question is, during the process, what is the best time to mention that you have a two-body problem or constraints related to family? Now, I can tell you this, about 15 years ago, this was a non-issue, because very rarely we confronted with this issue, even on Texas A&M campus. I don't recall, about 15 years ago, but now lately, this is a pretty predominant issue, because most families are two-body problems, right? Especially in small town like ours, it's a huge challenge for us to find opportunities for two bodies. So as a result, we have a number of faculty who commute from Austin, number of faculty commute from Houston, and the university is kind of open to that idea, just to hire good people. So the question is, ask any one of you chime in, what is a good time to mention that you have a two-body problem, or any constraints related to family? Anyone?
I think I can go. Yeah, I think all of these like two-body problems or salary issue, like all of these issues, so of course have to be probably, I think it would be better if you talk about them after you get an offer, honestly. And another issue is probably about the two-body problem. They may actually, so you have a limited time to answer, to actually answer the schools and see if you are going to accept it or not. And you should know that they also have a limited time in order to find a job for your partner or spouse. So usually if your partner or a spouse is someone who is actually working in academia, or they can actually probably can, most of the schools, especially those who are in a college town like places, they can actually make some things like being a lecturer, being a visiting assistant professor, being like a clinical assistant professor. But it's very challenging. It's not an easy issue, and you may not expect them to actually resolve this problem. Especially, I think for large cities and areas, I think they will not do anything probably. But I think you need to be honest and transparent about your problem. I think that's, yeah.
Agni?
Yeah, I agree. I think like also being synced with your partner about places you apply, that there are opportunities for both. like if there is no way you would ever fit into a place, like then like you don't, like you're like really like also wasting other people's time. So like you need to be and make sure that like if there are openings in both departments, let's say that you've applied already, that would be very helpful. Also, yeah, I've also realized that, you know, if you are in big cities, like you shouldn't expect like a lot of help in that sense, and so smaller college town universities are more helpful. But I would also keep it like after the offer, unless you're explicitly asked about it. So somebody might ask you in one of the one-to-one interviews if you have a two-body problem or something like that, and there you have to be honest, but otherwise you could only mention it after you have an offer.
Also, Agni, we're not supposed to ask that. You know, that is a university policy, or the legally we're not supposed to ask about unless you volunteer about. I'm not supposed to ask you. You know, are you looking? That's not an appropriate question, and that's not actually lawful either. So, so we don't ask those questions unless somebody volunteers. Certainly, we can have that conversation once we have an offer. But the universities like us, we do our very best to find something, because, you know, we want this colleague, and we'll do anything go any length to have this colleague with us. And sometimes it's very difficult for a small town like ours. You know, we don't have it. The opportunities are mostly on campus, and those opportunities go pretty fast. So we really have gone to a model where a number of our faculty commute from the big towns nearby, which was frowned upon 15 years ago. But now we say, yeah, we want that faculty. We don't care where they can live in Austin or Houston, but, you know, then if they're willing to commute. So my next question is, you got an offer and you're not going to accept it, right? Because whatever reason, you're a competitive offer, you want to go somewhere else. What is the best way to communicate that to the schools? Verónica?
I don't think I understand your question well.
The question is, let's suppose you get an offer and you have a competitive offer from somewhere else, and you decided to go to another school. And how do you communicate to this school that is gung-ho about you? How do you tell them nicely without, you know, spoiling that relationship that you are going to accept another offer? You can't come to that school, but how do you tactfully, you know, meaningfully communicate that to them?
Well, last year, because everything was virtual, you know, I remember we were having more emails conversations, right? And I remember I asked for an extension, the person says, yes, one more week. And when I make the call, you know, I mentioned to them the reasons why I chose the other offer, right? It's because of family, you know, because of the kind of work that I do fits better, perhaps, with the other school. Again, transparency. I follow up with everybody who interviewed me in that school to say, this is the reason. I want you to hear from me, not from anybody else, right? I want you to know why I made that choice. Yeah, again, transparency, telling them the reasons, if it's because of family, because of, you know, your partner, your spouse, find a job over there, because that's sometimes the, you know, why we make a call on one offer over the other. That's the way how I handle.
Scott?
Well, so, you know, I think for me, what ended up happening is I got an offer really early. It was very early, and, you know, the way, and, you know, kind of speaking to one of the earlier questions, the way that I applied to schools, just because COVID was it's kind of an atypical job market. I put together a list of schools, and I talked with my significant other, and I said, if any of these come through, I'm going, and it's whatever the first one is. So, you know, luckily I got one that's very close to my family, and then I just kind of followed up with some of the other ones that I had in the fire a little bit, and let them know that, hey, I'm taking this offer. The one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to like take an offer and then do a job talk right after that. So you want to make sure that you tell people that, hey, right away I'm taking this offer, don't waste any faculty time and things like
that. Many years ago, zillion years ago, I remember I had an offer from multiple schools, Texas A&M being one of them, and another school that offered me about $15,000 more, right? And I was struggling. Should I give up my $15,000 or should I go to Texas A&M? My advisor then, late Jeffrey Kennington, who was really big on network optimization. Jeff, he put the things in perspective for me. That he said, the offer you have in other state, they have state income tax, number one, and the cost of living is at least 1.5 times of Texas. So don't ever look at just another $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. In the long run, it doesn't pay off. In the long run, so make a choice not based on 10, 15. Make a choice because you like that place. You want to be part of that place. You like that community. So I thought that was a wonderful advice because I struggled. I said $15,000 when you get out of PhD program is a lot of money, but I was not thinking long term in terms of what other implications there are. So keep that in mind as you consider offers from different schools. It's never apples and apples. There are a lot of different factors to consider. Job salary offer is one of the many factors that you should consider, but don't make that a sole factor. That in a 10,000, I'll guarantee you that 10,000 is not going to make that much a difference when you have built a career at that place. So we're almost done. So I want to give each panel members a few minutes to give us. We have one last question. I want to read this question. I had 5 interviews so far. How long should I wait to hear back from other schools after Informs conference or DSI conference? Somebody's asking this question on chat. I had 5 interviews so far. How long should I wait to hear back from other schools? What is kind of the timeline? So any thoughts on that, panel members?
I think it varies a lot. Varies a lot by school.
I think so too.
So
yeah.
I don't think there is a rule of thumb on how much can you wait. Like, I think just like you might hear in 2 weeks, you might hear back in like 2 months. So it really depends on the priorities and the timelines of the school. So don't lose your hopes if you haven't heard back in a month, but also like just take it one at a time. So things are gonna come up, and you have more interviews and new interviews, and some schools will schedule back to back the pre-interview and the main interview, and some other schools will have to wait for a long time. So I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer to that.
Well, actually, that's a great answer because every school is different. They have a different timeline when the recruiting season starts. Some schools start very early in October. Some schools start in February. We go full force sometime mid-February. They're on that time. So if you haven't heard from some people, it means nothing. Actually, don't lose heart. Don't lose hope. So, panel members, I'll give you a couple of more minutes. Any final thoughts for our participants? And let me take this opportunity to thank you for spending an hour and a half with us. What a delightful conversation. What a helpful conversation for all our participants to hear from you because you've just been there and done that. So, thank you so much, and good luck to all of you. But I want to give panel members to give us some final thoughts. Verónica, you go first.
So I know that being in the job market is very stressful process. I know how, you may be, practicing your job talk and talking to your advisor about all of this. But I want you to think that this is, the visits, if you get a visit to the university, this is a great opportunities to develop your network. I'm going to emphasize this. this is the only time where many faculty are paying attention to your research, right? So take this as an opportunity. I know how stressful it can be, getting ready, preparing, and all of that. But think about the long-term implications, right? You actually are gonna make friends, as Dr. Bala was telling us, right? So it is I would say, you think about the long-term implication, just not the visit itself. Obviously, you are under stress. And the other aspect that I would like to emphasize: do your homework. I have seen, especially full professors, getting upset with candidates when the candidates do not know the work that the full professors are doing. I think assistant professors tend to be more laid back, but full professors expect that the candidates, when they visit, that they know what they are doing, their research. So do your homework, take your time, and study what the people in that particular school are doing. Because that, I would say, you will have better conversations in the one-to-one meetings with this faculty.
Esmaeil?
Thank you. Yeah. So the final comment is, I think as Verónica said, I think the job market here is a great situation where you can actually you can know a lot of people in a short period of time, and also let others know about your research. And I think that's a great situation. I think you will not have that much chance to introduce yourself to others. So take advantage of that. And also, so again, as Verónica said, you need to do your homework. You need to make sure, like wherever you are going to actually do your final job market presentation or your job market talk, you have to make sure that you did your homework. You have to make sure that you know the research of other faculties. You have to try your best to make your research connect to others, and see if there is any chance for you. I think that's very important. That it would be better even if you can actually see if there is some other research institution, research centers in the place that you applied, and see if you can take advantage of that, and also explain about those opportunities in your presentation or in your conversation with other faculty. I think that's all. And thanks a lot for for inviting me and having me here.
Thank you, Esmaeil. Agni?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just say that it's very important to have confidence in yourself and believe in your research, in your work, in your vision, in the things that you want to do in the coming years, and show that to your colleagues and to the people you're interviewing with, that you're passionate about the things that you do, that you love your work, and that you're very excited about it. People really appreciate that. And don't doubt yourself along the process. It's a very stressful, it's a very draining process, but you should always have confidence in yourself, and that will really make you shine while you interview. So I think that's something important to keep in mind. And if you need to post it on top of your laptop or the door at your room at your hotel to just remember that, then do it. Or just tell your best friend to call you before you start the day to just tell you that you're great, you're gonna do very well, and just go with full speed on at the interviews.
Thank you, Agni. Scott, you get to go last.
Okay. So I think the big thing is you gotta stay positive. What Agni was saying, you want to have good confidence in yourself. But you want to think about why people liked you versus why they didn't like you. So you don't want to ruminate on negative things. You want to be positive, because I think good things happen to you when you think positively. Secondly, I think a really good thing would be to have little treats for yourself, right? So think about, okay, so I've got a big interview day. I'm going to reward myself by having a really great, fried chicken sandwich or something like that after all these interviews are over. Something that, you can think about, like, okay, this interview's not, doing so great. Maybe I'll have that, chicken sandwich at 6:30 and it's going to be so good, right? So like little things like that, little rewards, I think can help you keep going.
Thank you, Scott. I was thinking more like a Mercedes, but
oh well. I mean, then once you get the job, I think about one thing that you're going to buy yourself.
Thank you so much, folks. If you're not a member of POMS, please join POMS. POMS is a fantastic organization, great people, great mentors. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a tremendous opportunity to build a network with some really, really good scholars, really good people. That's what I love about POMS. So let me know if you have any questions about these sessions or anything at all. If you want to get in touch with any of our panel members, I'm sure they wouldn't mind giving you some more tips. The previous speakers also said the same thing to me, all of them. So, well, thank you so much. Thank you for attending, and I hope to see you at one of our conferences pretty soon. Thank you. Verónica, Esmaeil, your next door neighbor, Agni, and Scott, thank you. Good luck. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Hopefully see you soon, okay?
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.